Hello, and welcome to Mitchell Consulting's webinar series for our Mitchell University. Today, we're going to be talking about document ownership in SAP Business One. For purpose of the demo, we're going to be using SAP Business One version 8.82. And we're going to talk about a feature called data ownership. What this allows us to do is within all our marketing documents, and these are the sales documents as well as purchasing, we can create ownership. This allows us to have certain people view either their own documents or groups. For purpose of today's demo, we're logged in 3 times. So we're going to see here that we're Jason, who's the manager. And Jason's the manager of 2 employees. So if we click here on Sophie, we have Sophie as a sales employee. And if we go here, we have Bill as an employee. So as you can see that in all the documents, and again, for purpose of today's demo, we're just going to work with the sales order, but this is true in all documents. There is something here called the owner. So you can see in this document, even though Sophie is the sales employee for the Earthshaker company, Bill is the owner of this document. This means that Bill entered the document. What this allows us to do is restrict access to documents. So if you see here, we're looking at document 307, which was a sales order. If we go back, we'll see 306. Again, you'll see the owner is Jason because Jason is the manager. So the way we set this up with this demo today is Jason is the manager for Sophie and Bill, which means Jason can see Sophie's documents as well as Bill's documents. Bill can look at Jason because he's the manager, and Sophie can look at Jason, he's the manager. But Sophie and Bill cannot view each other's documents. So if we scroll through here, we'll see documents. So let's see how that works on the 2. So we're going to do a new document for Bill. So we're going to create a document here. Just grab 2 items. And we're going to add. So we're going to see this is, Bill is the owner of this document. I'm going to add this document. We're going to call it back up. So you can see that document 309 belongs to Bill. Let's go to Sophie. And now in Sophie, let's look at the last document. And you notice that the last document we see here is 308. We do not see 309 because 309, the owner is Bill. And we have this set up that Bill cannot see Sophie's documents and Sophie cannot see Bill's documents. So let's enter an order now for Sophie. And you can see this is going to be 310. Just choose a couple items. And again, you're going to see that this now is Sophie. This is 310. So let's add this. Okay, so now, if we go back and we look here for Sophie, we look at the last document. Sophie's last document is 310, and she's the owner. If I go back 1 record, you will see that I skipped the 308, which is also Sophie. If we go to Bill, and we go here to the last record for Bill, you will see that it's 309. Again, if we go to Sophie, and we look at the last record for Sophie is sales order 310. This is because Sophie is the owner of 310 and Bill is not. So when I go to Bill, you can see here is Bill, and I look at the last record, I get 309. So Bill is looking at 309, which is his document, but Bill cannot access 310 sales order because that belongs to Sophie. Same holds true. If I go to Sophie and I go back 1, I'm going to go from 310, which you see here, I'm going to skip 309, and I'm going to be at 308. So what the ownership does, it allows me to restrict access to marketing documents. If we go to Jason, who is the manager, and we open up the sales orders, we can see that Jason has access to all of them because he's the manager over Sophie and Bill. So you can see here in Jason, I have access to Sophie's sales order. I have access to 309, which is Bill's sales order, and so on. Okay, so let's see how we set that up. We're going to go into the management. Now, with DataShip Owner Management, we need to set up the employees. What we need to do is we need to use our Human Resource module. So we're going to go into our Human Resource module, and you can see here that I need to create employees, and I need to reference those employees to a user code. So you can see here that I have an employee in the employee master data under Human Resources. We've created an employee, Jason, and we've linked him to a user code manager. We've created an employee, Bill, and we've linked him to a user code, Bill. And we've created an employee called Sophie, and we linked it to Sophie. Let's see how this works. Let's open this up a little bigger. So you can see here that when I go into Jason, the manager is blank because Jason is doesn't have a manager. He's the top layer for this particular demo. So what we have is we have Jason as the manager, and then beneath Jason we have two subordinates, which are Sophie and Bill. That's why when we go here and we look at Bill, we can see that Bill as a manager is Jason, and we can see that Sophie as a manager also has Jason. So let's look at the tabs here. For our setup. So we have our different tabs on our employee master file. Let's go here to Jason, and we can see. So now let's look at how this works with the actual setup. So we're going to go into administration, system initialization, and under authorizations, we have our regular authorizations. We also have the DataShip authorizations down here. So we're going to open this module, and we can see that we've set up sub-data ownership authorizations. You'll see here that you'll notice that if you're set up as a super user, in this case you can see that Jason is a super user, so he has full access for everything. Sophie is not a super user, so you can see that I can change the information as well as Bill. So here we have our documents. In this case, we're going to work with the sales order, but we can use this for all documents. And we have our levels. We have peers. Peer, this ownership type describes a relationship among the employees who have the same direct manager. So in this case, we have Sophie and Bill. So if I wanted to set those two together to see each other's documents, I can change this to full access. The manager, this ownership type can be defined as the employee's direct manager. And manager authorization allows employees to access documents owned by his direct manager. So in this case, Jason is a direct manager, and underneath Jason is Sophie and Bill. So Bill and Sophie can access the documents of their direct manager, which is Bill. We also have a department. In a department, this ownership type describes the relationships among the employees that work in the same department. A department authorization allows employees to access documents owned by all the employees in this department. We also have the branch. This ownership type describes a relationship among the employees that work in the same branch. A branch authorization allows employees to access documents owned by all the employees in his branch. And then we have a team. And for purpose of the demo today, we're using the team. In a team, this ownership type describes relationships among the employees that belong onto the same team. A team authorization allows employees to access documents owned by all the employees on his team. So what we did for this one, we created two teams. So let's take a look at that. Before we do that, we're going to see also here we have the data ownership exceptions. Now what we can do is, here we enabled our ownership filtrations. What we can do is we can exclude specific forms from the data ownership, because in this case, let's say we're looking at AR invoices and AP invoices, but we want to exclude if it's an AR tax invoice. Okay, we can exclude those. We can also do the filtering based on the header and row owners as well as the header only. What that means is that for every row on an order, you can have a specific owner. So if we set that, and then I enter, let's say Bill enters the document, and he enters the first two line items, those two line items belong to Bill. But if we set it up that Sophie's part of the team, and Sophie calls that order up to change it or update it, and she adds line 3, then that line belongs to Sophie. So we can actually separate the two, and we can bring it down into the line level. For purposes here, we're just going to use the header and rows together. So we're going to use the entire document for our demo today. So again, the authorizations here are set up in data ownership. And again, we can see here that we have Bill as full team ownership. We have Sophie who has full team ownership. But again, we can do all these together. So now let's take a look at that. Let's go into our human resources. And let's go here to our memberships and look. So for example, here, let me actually just do these together so we can see where this is coming from. So we can see here, we have our peers. We discussed the peer is relation among employees of the same direct manager. So you can see here that on this one, if we were to set the peers to be on, that means that Bill and Sophie would be able to see each other's documents. And we'll do that example in a few moments. We also have the managers. Again, as we discussed, the manager ownership is for the direct manager. We also have the department. As we discussed, the department ownership describes the relationship among all the employees that work in the same department. So we can create the departments. We have our branch, which we can do our branches. And then we have our teams. So down here would be our specific team. So you can see that Sophie here is part of sales team number 1. And her role on that team is a member. So that means she's a member of sales team 1, and she has full access to the teams. That means she can see anybody that's within her team. So in the case, she's the only one on her team, but you can just do the teams. If you had multiple people on a team, you can have her as the team leader. We also see, if we go to Jason, we can see the same thing. We can see that Jason is the manager. Jason is the leader of both Team 1 and Team 2. This way, Jason can see the documents of Team 1 and Team 2. Team 1 is Sophie, and Team 2 is Bill. So we can see here the same with Bill. So Bill is Team 2. So we have this as teams. So this is the main setup. Now, one of the good things about using data authorizations is really to access restricted data. We have clients that use this really from the accounting side for payroll purposes. What happens to a lot of our clients is that they have their salespeople set up as vendors. So what they're doing is they're entering information in SAP invoices, let's say, to pay commissions, or they may enter payroll information on an AP invoice because they have their salespeople or their employees set up as vendors. So one of the nice things about this is we can create a setup that nobody can see those types of documents. So again, let's take a look at this and let's make a change and we can see how it works. So again, we're going to go here and we're going to say that, again, we have Jason, who's the leader of Team 1 and Team 2. We have Bill, who is Team 2, and we have Sophie, who is Team 1. So we can set up, let's say here, so we have a department. Let's say Sophie's part of the sales department, and let's make Bill part of the sales department. Let's update that. So let's go here into departments, and we can take Bill, and on our sales order, we would give him full access. And Sophie, on our sales order, we give full access. Let's close this out. See here, we're just going to have to log off and log on real quick. You can see here that we're seeing access for all the documents. This also holds true with Bill. So to recap, let's see what we've gone through. Let's go back here to the main screen, and let's talk about data ownership, setting it up, and actually going through it. So what we do is we go on our administration, our data ownership authorizations. Here we have our employees. We must define these people as employees. So we go into our human resource module. And here we define our employees. And our employees are linked to a user code. So in this example, Jason logs in as the manager. We have Bill, who's logged in as Bill. And we have Sophie, who logs in as Sophie. You can see here that if we look at Bill, we can do data ownership based on some parameters. We can do it based on a peer. A peer, this ownership type describes a relationship among all employees who have the same direct manager. So in this case, we have Sophie and Bill as a direct manager is Jason. We can do a manager. This ownership type can be defined for the employee's direct manager. A manager's authorization allows an employee to access documents owned by his direct manager. So you can see here that in this case, Jason is a direct manager for Sophie and for Bill. And that's why Sophie and Bill can see Jason's documents, but they can't see their own. You can do a subordinate. This ownership type can be defined for all employees that work directly under the same employee. Subordinate authorization allows an employee to access documents owned by all his subordinate employees. So in this case, we can do the same thing. So if we have people who work for Jason, in this case, we can have Sophie and Bill working for Jason, and we can set up the same type of relationship. We can do it based on a department. This ownership type describes a relationship among all the employees who work in the same department. We can do it by branch. Again, this ownership type describes relationship among all the employees that work for the same branch. And we can also do a team. This is ownership describes a relationship among the employees that belong to the same team. And this information is in the employee master data. So you can see here, you have your departments, you branch, you have your managers, and under the membership here, you have your teams and peers. So in this case, we have Sophie, who is on Sales Team 1. She's a member of Sales Team 1. We have Bill, who's a member of Sales Team 2. And we have Jason, who is on both teams, Team 1, Sales Team 1, and Sales Team 2 as the leader. Again, that's how we set it up. We can also do this. In the purpose of this demo, we're doing it for the entire document, but we can go in and do the authorizations. We can do it also by header row. With this, again, this would be if in the case of you have multiple people on the team. So if Bill and Sophie were on the same team, and I had them set up where Bill and Sophie can see each other's documents and edit each other's documents, what we can do is they can both enter line items on the document. You can also exclude forms, because you may want to exclude a certain type of form out of the system, so you can also exclude that. So again, once data ownership is activated, which you can see here, this enables the data ownership process. You can see that here, when you go to Sophie and you look at sales orders, again, Sophie is the owner of the document. And when you are using this, you need to define owners for documents. Even though the owner is not related, you still have to set them up as an owner of a document, even though they're not part of a team. So you can see here, if we look at the last record, sales order 310, the owner is Sophie. If we go back, we skip 309, and we go to sales order 308, which is also Sophie. If we look at Jason, we look at Bill, okay, you can see that Bill is 309 because he's the owner, and he's 307. So again, you can see Bill is 309, and we're skipping 308. We're going from 309 back to 307. That's because document 308 is owned by Sophie. Again, that concludes our presentation today on data ownership. Again, what data ownership allows you to do is create groups or teams of individuals, and you can restrict access to certain marketing documents. In the example we did today, we had two sales teams. We had Sales Team 1, which consisted of Sophie. We had Sales Team 2, which consisted of Bill. So they were independent of each other. So in this case, Sophie can only view Sophie's documents, and Bill can only view Bill's documents. And then we had Jason, who was the manager. So he was the hierarchy of this, so Jason can look at both. And again, this can be done, data ownership can be done on the peer level, the manager level, subordinate, the department, the branch, and the team. And when working with data ownership, you must define your users as employees. And we see that here. The prerequisite is to go into the human resource module, and we must define our users as employees. And the link is the user code. So we have Sophie, who is linked here. And again, we can see the department, the branch, and we can see the teams and the peers all here, which we can set up. So once again, that concludes our demo today on SAP Business One's data ownership. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website. You can visit us at www.mitchellgroup.com to view. And once again, we thank you for your time.